Since being taken over by Acun Ilıcalı at the beginning of this year, Hull City have been linked with every footballer who has so much as set foot in Turkey at any stage of their lives, even if it was just on a family holiday, and failing that, anyone who has ever eaten a Turkish delight. Alaïs Minesh and Ozan Tufan have both been signed from Ilıcalı's own club Fenerbahçe, who we also travelled to Istanbul to play in a pre-season friendly. Fees have been agreed for Doğukan Sinik and Benjamin Tete from Antalyaspor and Yeni Malatyaspor respectively, and Turkish company Corendon Airlines are our new shirt sponsors. There is even a Turkish flag now flying outside of the ground. I have left Hull City's Turkish ties and unusual transfer window out of this 7, as I am going to make an entire video about that soon. And I have done likewise with Shakhtar Donetsk and Ludogorets Razgrad's penchant for signing Brazilians, both of which I have covered in much greater detail in previous videos, and both of which are pretty interesting, or I thought so at least, if you haven't already seen them. However, the likes of the mighty Tigers in Turkey, Shakhtar and Brazil, and Wolves in Portugal, combined with a couple of requests, gave me the idea of taking a look at some of football's more unusual affiliations between clubs and countries. I enlisted the help of some of you over on Twitter with this one to help broaden my horizons, and some of the responses were genuinely fascinating. I have attempted to whittle it down to just 7 of my favourites though, so here are 7 football clubs with unusual affiliations with specific countries. 7th, Middlesbrough and North Korea. Quite possibly the best known inclusion in this 7, but still an absolute belter. The connection between Middlesbrough and North Korea must surely be one of the strangest in world football. An isolated hermit kingdom, cut off from the rest of the world and still bearing the scars of the 1980s, and North Korea. My sincere apologies to any smoggies who might be watching for that very tired and lazy joke format, but North Korea really is a hermit kingdom with more limited interaction with the outside world than just about any other nation on earth, which is probably what makes their unlikely union with Middlesbrough, an industrial town in the northeast of England, quite so special. The origins of Middlesbrough and North Korea's connection came at the 1966 World Cup, when Middlesbrough's Ayrston Park hosted all 6 games in Group 4. Despite being enormous minnows, physically much smaller than all of their opponents, and losing their opening game 3-0 to the Soviet Union, North Korea battled back with a 1-1 draw against Chile, and most famously of all, a 1-0 win against Italy to advance to the knockout stage. The people of Middlesbrough immediately took to North Korea's valiant and entertaining side and their never-say-die attitude, and so did most of the English public in truth. Middlesbrough's bond with North Korea would be enduring though, formalised in 2002 after the surviving members of North Korea's 1966 World Cup team returned to the town and were given a hero's welcome. That visit was to the Riverside Stadium rather than to Ayrston Park, which was demolished in 1997, and the following year there was a fair amount of controversy when, on July 19th, to mark the anniversary of North Korea's famous win against Italy, the mayor of Middlesbrough decided to fly the North Korean flag from Middlesbrough's town hall. Some saw it as a mere celebration of an incredibly unlikely friendship, one that could only really have ever been formed by sport. Meanwhile, others found it distasteful given the various human rights abuses perpetrated by the DPRK and the Kim dynasty. But whichever side of that particular divide you fall down upon, you cannot deny that it is absolutely bloody mental and hilarious, especially when you think about what people who were unaware of the context that I have already provided you with must have thought when they saw it. They may well have assumed that Kim had launched a successful invasion of these fair isles and now ruled over them. You could argue that the union here is really more one between the town of Middlesbrough and North Korea than Middlesbrough Football Club and the Asian nation. But Middlesbrough's women's team did take a trip to Pyongyang in 2010 to face 2 North Korean clubs. And who knows, maybe one day the men's team will do likewise. hopefully visiting a very different North Korea. They lost both games, it should be said. Women's football in North Korea is actually really rather good. 6th, Elche and Argentina. I have always thought of Elche as being minnows in La Liga, and in some respects they are, having only spent a handful of seasons in Spanish football's top flight since the 1970s. However, the city of Elche is actually quite big, about the 20th largest municipality in Spain. Their stadium has a capacity of almost 34,000, and their average attendance of 16,000 last season was the 11th highest in La Liga. None of this is remotely relevant to the club's links to Argentina. I just found it interesting and a worthwhile point of clarification in case any of you suffered from similar misconceptions up until this point. Nope, you already knew. Alright, moving on. Elche are owned by an eccentric Argentine named Christian Bragarnik, who is one of South America's most high-profile football agents. It was whilst running a video store in Buenos Aires that Bragarnik started editing the highlights reels of aspiring footballers to send to clubs and scouts, before he decided to just cut out the middleman and represent those players himself. Bragarnik was formerly the agent of Diego Maradona, having handled his move to Mexico as a manager, and his clients hail almost exclusively from Argentina. In 2019, Bragarnik acquired a 90% stake in Elche, who were mid-table in the Segunda division at the time, along with footballers Gustavo Bo and Dario Benedetto, who became minority shareholders. Bragarnik quickly set about using his contacts to bring a handful of Argentines to Alicante, including Benedetto himself, who became one of very few men to have played for a club that he actually part-owned, making it a little bit awkward therefore when manager Fran Escriba dropped him. Whilst Elche have been rather chaotically run under Bragarnik, they did win an unlikely promotion from the Segunda Division in 2020, and though they have only done so by the skin of their teeth, they have survived in La Liga for the last 2 seasons. Currently, there are 4 Argentines in the Elche squad, including Ezequiel Ponce, who just signed on a permanent basis, and the incredibly gifted Javier Pastore, who played 15 games for the club last season in a desperate attempt to revive his injury-saddled career. 5th, Oriental Dragon FC and China. A club that was brought to my attention by the Football Manager YouTuber and streamer Zealand, who some of you will be familiar with, and his followers. You could probably take a successful stab in the dark at which country young Portuguese football club Oriental Dragon FC are affiliated with, just based upon their name. It is a little reported fact, at least within the English-speaking world, but for the last 10 to 15 years, Chinese money has poured into lower league football in Portugal. Of course, Chinese money has flooded into European football in general, but as of 2016, there were already 10 lower league teams in Portugal that had received Chinese investment. That is likely to have tempered a little bit over the last 12 months, as Xi Jinping's footballing escapades have taken a pretty sizable dent, but Oriental Dragon FC are still standing, just about. Chinese businessman Qi Chen is the man behind Oriental Dragon through the vehicle of his company W Sports 7, and they are the 3rd Portuguese club that he has invested in to date. Chen has been involved in Portuguese football since all the way back in 2006, having brokered Yu Dabo and Wang Geng's moves to Benfica, and he created Oriental Dragon FC in 2014 as a way in which to develop young Chinese footballers within the highest standard of Portuguese football and by talented Portuguese coaches, with the ultimate goal of those players one day returning to China to raise the level of domestic football in the country. It was all part of China's long-term plan to become a major footballing nation and eventually to win the World Cup. And the amount of Chinese money that has gone into Portuguese football specifically, and some of the shady arrangements surrounding those payments, would actually make for quite an interesting video all of its own. As for Oriental Dragon, well, they entered the Portuguese league system in the 2015-16 season, they won promotion in 2018, and again in 2020, but they were relegated in the season just gone, back down into the 4th tier of Portuguese football. Their current squad contains just 2 Chinese players, in the first team squad at least, but they have had many more in the past, most of whom, unfortunately, returned to China in total obscurity rather than becoming the stars of the Chinese Super League and China's national team as hoped. 4th, FC Emmen and Peru. Dutch minnows FC Emmen were founded in 1925, but didn't turn professional until they won promotion to the Eerste Divisie in 1985, and it was only in 2018 that the club first won promotion to the Eredivisie. They were relegated in 2021, but bounced back at the first attempt last season, meaning that they will be back in the Eredivisie in the upcoming campaign. Since signing Peruvian international Sergio Peña, Emmen have seemingly developed a real penchant for signing players from Peru, despite there being little connection, seemingly, between Peru and the Netherlands. Indeed, just 9 Peruvians have ever played in the Eredivisie, and 6 of them have played for Emmen, all since 2019. Miguel Araujo is the most notable, capped 22 times by Peru since 2014, and a star man for the newly promoted Eredivisie side. Araujo's impressive performances last season have seen him linked with a move away from the club this summer. Meanwhile, Emmen's fondness for Peruvians has apparently come as a consequence of their close work with an agent from the South American nation. By total coincidence, Emmen's colours and badge bear a striking resemblance to Peru's colours and badge, and hopefully they will go the whole hog and recreate Peru's iconic sash on their shirt before too long. 3rd, Drogheda United and Turkey. Hull City's Turkish ties may miss out, since they will soon be getting the full video treatment, but an Irish club with a much longer association with a transcontinental nation does not. Drogheda United may not be signing some of the Turkish Super League's biggest names in multi-million-pound deals, but the League of Ireland side not only has an affiliation with Turkey, which dates back 177 years, they also have a formal relationship with the Turkish Super League's reigning champions. Drogheda and Turkey's affiliation goes back so long that it actually predates both Drogheda United and the existence of Turkey as a nation-state itself. If that sounds a little bit confusing, which I would imagine that it does, then allow me to explain. During the Great Famine of the 1840s, a period of mass starvation, disease, and exodus from Ireland, from which the island of Ireland has never fully recovered, a quarter of the island's population either emigrated or starved to death. The British government's attitude towards the plight of the Irish was one of ambivalence at best and malice at worst, later leading to a surge in Republican sentiment, but in their hour of need, Ireland did receive aid from an unlikely source, in the form of another colonial empire. The Ottoman Sultan Abdulmajid I donated £1,000 in relief, a not insignificant sum at the time, along with 5 ships full of food. Those ships sailed up the Boyne before docking in Drogheda harbour, and the people of Drogheda have not forgotten about that act of kindness, the best part of 2 centuries on. What's more, when Drogheda United fell on hard times financially in 2008, they found support in the form of financial aid coming from Turkey yet again, this time from individuals attempting to do all they could to help. Of particular assistance were the supporters of Trabzonspor, whose clubs share the same colours as Drogheda United. During the internet age, a bond was formed between Drogheda United and Trabzonspor supporters, one which was officially recognised in 2011 when the 2 teams became sister clubs. No Turkish players have yet played for Drogheda, but it is said that the club receive a number of orders for their home shirt from the city of Trabzon. Fun fact, and one that is actually not so fun at all and is really rather depressing if true, legend has it that Abdulmajid I, the Ottoman Sultan, actually wanted to send the Irish £10,000 in aid, but he was persuaded to send just £1,000 by the British, since Queen Victoria had only donated £2,000, and it was against protocol for anyone to donate more than the monarch. You know, because sod people starving, eh? We have got royal protocol to preserve. Second, Sint-Truiden and Japan. A number of Japanese players have headed to Belgium in recent years, perhaps viewing it as a more accessible gateway to go on to bigger and better things in European football. And no club has signed more Japanese players than Sint-Truiden. Perhaps that should come as a little surprise, given that the club is owned by DMM.com, one of Japan's largest conglomerates, which was founded by billionaire Keiichi Kamiyama in 1999. Kamiyama made his initial fortune in pornography, but nowadays DMM.com specialises in online shopping and rather less X-rated video on-demand services. In 2017, the company bought Sint-Truiden, replacing controversial former Charlton Athletic owner Roland Duchâtelet at the Belgian club, and they immediately set about signing a load of Japanese players. So many, in fact, that in 2019, club chairman David Meekers came out and said publicly that they wouldn't sign any more, stating, "We will not sign any more Japanese players. As a matter of fact, we bought too many last summer." End quote. That was a slightly unusual comment, given that STVV finished 7th that season in one of their best league campaigns of the modern era, and their Japanese cohort that season included Daichi Kamada, who won the Europa League last season with Eintracht Frankfurt, and Takahiro Tomiyasu, who enjoyed a decent debut campaign at Arsenal last season. Despite what Meekers said, Sint-Truiden have since signed more Japanese players, including Shinji Kagawa, who joined the club in January 2022. First, Hearts and Lithuania. I refuse to leave you shortchanged on this channel, ever, and in the spirit of that sentiment, we end with another truly bizarre club and country affiliation. And unlike some of the others, it is one which Hearts fans no doubt wish had never been formed. Hearts are one of the biggest clubs in Scottish football, with a trophy count that is bettered by only Celtic, Rangers, and Aberdeen. And back in the 2004-05 season, in which the club finished 5th in the Scottish Premier League, Russian-born Lithuanian businessman Vladimir Romanov acquired a 19.6% stake in the club. Romanov was the chairman of UBIG Investments, which owned a majority stake in Lithuanian bank Ūkio Bankas, and the company acquired majority shareholdings in a number of sports teams, including football clubs in both Lithuania and Belarus, as well as Scotland of course, and a basketball club in Belarus. Hearts were in financial turmoil when Romanov arrived, and over the next few years, he grew his ownership in the club to an 82% controlling interest. Romanov's plan to eradicate the club's debt was to sell the team's historic home ground, Tynecastle, and rent out Murrayfield Stadium instead, the home of rugby union in Scotland. Hearts fans, unsurprisingly, disapproved of Romanov's plans, and were always sceptical of his ownership after his unsuccessful attempts to buy Dundee United, Dundee, and Dunfermline before settling upon crisis-ridden Hearts. Romanov said that he was keen to see whether Lithuanian players could succeed in Scotland, and between 2005 and 2011, he signed a whopping 17 players from Lithuania, a country which has one of the weakest football leagues and national teams in all of Europe, and where basketball reigns supreme. Rather than reduce Hearts' debt, as he had promised to do, the club's debt pile increased dramatically under Romanov's stewardship, and in 2013, Ūkio Bankas went bankrupt, with Hearts owing the failed Lithuanian bank some £15 million. Hearts subsequently entered into administration, and in the 2013-14 season, the club was relegated from the top flight of Scottish football for the first time since 1981. Thankfully, local businesswoman Anne Budge stepped in to save Hearts, getting the club back on its feet and back in the top flight, before transferring ownership to the foundation of Hearts last season. FBK Kaunas Romanov's Lithuanian football club weren't quite so fortunate, as they were dissolved, sadly, in 2012. So that is it for today's video. There are loads of others who some of you might be thinking of, and may well leave a comment about down below, but I am recording this at now gone midnight, after England beat Spain in the Women's Euros last night, and given that I have still got all of the editing to do, the thumbnail, and all of the technical stuff that I won't bore you with, it is going to be a pretty long night for your favourite YouTube sensation. So I will leave it at that. Maybe there'll be a part 2 if this video absolutely blows it out of the water. Thank you all very much as ever for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it. Hit the like button if that was the case. Let me know your thoughts, as I say, down below in the comments, and make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on for HITC Sevens. You can also find me over on Twitter or on Instagram via the username @HITC Sevens on both, should you wish to do so. Have a brilliant day.